an explorer is ready for any challenge with a legendary Valkyrie. If you dig my recaps, don't forget to subscribe and smash that notification bell. Somewhere in a dungeon in Japan, Kaito Takagi was using his store-bought insecticides to hunt slimes, a common practice in his daily life. As he coldly executed each of these gelatinous monsters, he holstered his poison cans like a gunslinger in the Wild West. After 2 years of this routine on the first floor of the dungeon, Kaito had just completed his 999th slime kill. Despite feeling useless for only annihilating walking jellies, he didn't get discouraged and promised to finish off the 1000th enemy to end the day on a high note. As he walked, security cameras followed his steps and analyzed his stats, which were never anything remarkable. Suddenly, he came face to face with a golden slime in the middle of the path, seeing it as the perfect opportunity to complete his 1000 victories in style against this special kind. As always, the slime destroyer approached the creature and sprayed the insecticide, but this one was much more agile than he was used to, dodging the spray with the reflexes of a fly. Kaito didn't give up and pulled out his repellent gun, this time hitting the target, which fell stiff to the ground, or rather limp. Despite the achievement, the young man noticed that even this rare monster didn't give much XP, but at least he could take its magic core in hopes of fetching a good price. Upon picking up the item, he saw the image of a mythological creature drawn on what appeared to be a gold-plated card. Examining the object's description, Kaito realized it was a Valkyrie named Sylphie, getting excited at the thought of finally obtaining a legendary servant card. Looking around to make sure no one saw him pick up the card, he quickly searched the internet for information about the Valkyrie, but there was nothing in the database about her. If he wasn't mistaken, the only thing Kaito knew was that these women were demigoddesses from some mythology, which was enough for him to deduce that this item had some interesting value. Whether the card was valuable or not, the young man had no intention of giving it to anyone. Exiting the dungeon through Gate 6, he saw adventurers heading out in their powerful armor and weapons and wondered if he'd ever get the chance to use such high-level gear. If he sold the rare card for a good price, maybe he could stroll around with a legendary flaming sword or a diamond-coated shield. With that in mind, he went to the Cavern's trading center to sell the common slime cores he had collected. With 3 in hand, considering each was worth 500, he was offered only 1,500 yen, equivalent to $10. Playing the innocent boy, he asked the clerk how much it would be worth if he sold a rare servant card, and she said that such an item was worth about 1 billion yen overseas. Hearing this, the kid spiraled into a crazy obsession, unable to stop repeating that amount as he wandered around in a daze. After storing his belongings and leaving, he looked like a zombie, muttering the same thing until he reached the exit of the establishment where he conducted his expeditions, the dungeon and resort, still under the watchful eyes of security cameras. The next day, on the establishment's 4-year anniversary, he was still on the same track as the day before, and this time his friends heard what he was saying and asked what this 1 billion talk was about. Trying to deflect the issue, Kaito turned to Shinji and Hayato and heard that they had obtained explorer passports and could enjoy the anniversary event's attractions for free. Later on the way home, Kaito remembered that he was only on level 3, but his friends could return and explore the dungeons to find something interesting. However, the two wanted to stay away from that kind of adventure for now. Recently, they had descended to level 2 and underestimated the goblins, thinking defeating those monsters would be easier than taking candy from a baby, but they got a merciless beating from one of those creatures. After that, they decided it was better to enjoy a light amusement park rather than get thrashed for nothing. As for Kaito, they found it curious that he had been killing slimes non-stop for 2 years, so Kaito explained that he didn't go to the dungeon just for that, but didn't delve into the matter. Upon reaching his street, walking along the sidewalk at night, Kaito was recognized by a girl from her bedroom window who seemed happy to see him passing by. The next day, a quiz show host asked how many years it had been since the dungeons appeared, and a contestant hit the button to answer that it had been 13 years, the correct response. During the meal, Kaito's parents emphasized that he needed to work but shouldn't forget to study. However, all he could think about was that card and what would happen if he summoned summon the Valkyrie. If he did, maybe he could go to the more difficult levels of the dungeons, but if he sold the card, he could buy his dream equipment plus a mansion with a pool and a private dungeon next to a home theater. This cruel dilemma hammered so much in the boy's head that he could hardly sleep, to the point of going to school the next day without rest. At least the nosy girl Katsuragi left home at the same time as him, so they bumped into each other. Seizing the moment, she asked where he went last night since she saw him returning home, so he said he was at an all-boys meeting with Shinji and Hayato, the famous boys club. Speaking of the devil, the two popped up out of nowhere on the path, so Kaito grabbed them and asked them not to tell that he went to the dungeon yesterday. Katsuragi asked what they were doing together, and each responded with something different. Noticing the inconsistency, the girl questioned if Kaito had gone to the dungeon again, but the kid lied blatantly. Innocent or not, Katsuragi believed him and went on her way. Arriving at school, Kaito asked his friends what they would do if they found a rare servant card, and the two replied that they would definitely sell it to become rich, especially since a servant could only be summoned inside the dungeons. Anyway, they pointed out that finding such a card was harder than winning the lottery, and Kaito gave a sheepish smile. During classes, he couldn't get the issue out of his head, reflecting that he wouldn't be able to sell the card if he summoned the servant, not even knowing if it would be useful to him. However, looking at Katsuragi, other ideas came to his mind. As soon as he returns to the dungeon, he pulls out the card and realizes it's worth $1 billion, but he knows he needs to follow the right path for Katsuragi's sake. Then he summons Sylphie, the Valkyrie, creating a powerful tornado in the cave that dissipates, revealing the figure of a gigantic mythological creature. This creature envelops the boy in its hands until it completely disappears, leaving the card user lost. However, a small, innocent Valkyrie pokes him on the back and introduces herself as Sylphie, making the poor boy kneel, feeling the $1 billion he had in his pocket slip away. Sylphie asks what's going on, so Kaito pretends it's nothing and invites the little girl to go slime hunting with her uncle. A few steps ahead, she catches her master's attention and alerts him to the presence of a nearby slime, and he is surprised to see that she can detect creatures around. In the end, the Valkyrie was right, and an unsuspecting slime was lurking in the depths of the cave. As usual, Kaito draws the insecticide, but before attacking, he asks Sylphie if she can defeat the creature. The small mythological figure enthusiastically affirms that she can, and then she steps forward to make a demonstration. Conjuring an extremely powerful divine lightning, she disintegrates the poor blue jelly without mercy, with a smile on her face, leaving her master speechless. He knows she has 170 combat points, 17 times more than he does, and that she continues to be a goddess even if only half of one. Changing the subject, the Valkyrie mentions that her stomach growled and looks directly at the defeated creature's magic core. Kaito asks if she wants to eat the core, and she nods. Kaito had read somewhere that servants were fed with this substance, so he lets her eat it. As expected, the girl thanks him enthusiastically for replenishing her energy and calls her master to face another slime she detected, but he asks her to take a break. From what he observed, Sylphie gets hungry when she fights and needs to feed on the magic cores she gets, but since it's the only valuable thing in a slime, he would end up with nothing because he would have to feed the girl. In that case, he would run out of money for the insecticide, so he thinks of a plan and asks the servant to find new slimes. By doing so, he maintains his usual strategy of killing the creatures with the repellent, just having Sylphie detect their presence without expending energy in the fight. With that, he levels up to 4 and celebrates, plus his combat points go up by 2 points. Sylphie enthusiastically congratulates her master until he notices that he earned the title of Slime Exterminator, increasing his stats by 50% when facing a monster of that species. Obviously, this dampened the boy's excitement because being enhanced against a slime is like having 2 slippers to kill an ant instead of just 1. Sylphie tries to console her master, saying that having new skills is great and highlighting how incredible it is that he achieved that, and Kaito thinks it's nice of her to be like that, but something still bothers him deeply. The girl asks what it is, but he says it's nothing much. Then he announces that he will stop exploring the dungeon for today. Making a sad face, Sylphie asks if she will be summoned again, and he promises she will, which relieves the girl. Then he pulls out the card to return Sylphie inside. At the sales counter, Kaito impresses the employee with the amount of magic cores he collected in just 1 day of expedition, and he says he was lucky to find a bunch of slimes at once. The woman believes him and emphasizes that he broke the record for slimes hunted in a single day and announces a value of 15,000 yen in exchange for all the items he collected. At night back home, Kaito Takagi still couldn't sleep in bed this time, reflecting on how powerful the Valkyrie actually is. With her, perhaps he can really go to the second floor, even though he's afraid of goblins. Many years ago, when he was a child, Kaito watched a live broadcast of Dungeon 37 on TV with Katsuragi, where the girl's father, Captain Katsuragi, tells the reporter that he intends to go to the deepest level of the dungeon and one day uncover the secret of these mysterious caves. The reporter comments on how the captain faces the unknown with courage and wisdom, and every word of that story enchanted young Kaito more and more, who didn't take his eyes off the television for a second. In sequence, Kaito wakes up from this dream and knows what he has to do. Thus, he prepares to go to the second level of the dungeon alongside Sylphie with improvised equipment. As always, the Valkyrie shows all her joy in participating in this expedition for the first time, and the boy makes it clear that he counts on her in this decisive moment. After all this time being content with slimes, Kaito descends the dungeon stairs towards a new challenge, and just like Captain Katsuragi, he promises to uncover the mysteries of the depths and become a hero just like the captain, while also pursuing another goal just as important. 15 years ago, two brothers finally discovered the mysterious entrance to a dungeons that began appearing all over the world. Alongside the special dungeon exploration group, these heroes planned to brave the dark recesses of the caves and uncover their secrets. Comprised of various professionals, this is the largest elite group on the face of the earth, ready to undertake any mission assigned to them. Entering the terrifying domain of monsters, the brothers showed no fear facing evil head-on with their powerful abilities against the monstrous creatures that appeared along the way, descending floor by floor into the malevolent depths of the unknown. Although they had not reached the deepest levels, the brothers planned to compensate their fans with an incredible theme park that perfectly simulated the known floors of the dungeon. With this, they hoped to pressure the government to allow 15-year-olds to obtain their hunter licenses, as they believed this was the optimal age. However, not everything was a vacation, and as the brothers progressed, the challenges increased drastically. Eventually, the young explorer couldn't withstand the cardboard dragon and ended up dying, but not before expressing his love for his little sister, who despaired at this dramatic moment. Determined, the girl promised to defy the laws of nature and bring her brother back to life with a super antidote. She then expelled the liquid into her mouth and pulled the boy close to pass the potion to his mouth in this incredible episode of Dungeon Love Story. Back to reality, Kaito Takagi didn't have the same vigor as the series brothers, and thus he grew tired and trembled with fear at the second floor of the dungeon. To offer her usual support, Sylphie held the boy's hand and calmed him down. Continuing the journey, the Valkyrie warned of a goblin around the corner, but given Kaito's bad experience with such creatures, he turned back and miraculously caught his breath as he sped away. However, the image of Captain Katsuragi flashed in his mind, causing him to slap his face to face the challenge and become a protagonist once and for all. Thus, even while stuttering and with a swollen face, he drew his wooden sword and promised to defeat the fearsome goblin. Turning the corner, there was the goblin napping. So Kaito handed the responsibility to the Valkyrie, who attempted a divine lightning strike. However, the boy stepped in front of her after realizing he needed to do this himself, but accepted her help if things got tough. He struck first with his sword, but missed, leaving an opening for a counterattack. Quickly, Kaito raised his shield and blocked the opponent's charge, and they contested the space shoulder to shoulder. Showing strength, he didn't know he had the boy knocked down the goblin and struck confidently, but the monster grabbed the sword and disarmed the adventurer. With no other choice, he drew his insecticide and sprayed it in the creature's eye, momentarily blinding it. After this brilliant strategy, Kaito retrieved his main weapon and went back on the offensive, stumbling along the way and luckily thrusting the sword into the goblin's belly, defeating it. In victory, the young boy couldn't contain his emotion and shed tears of joy for finally defeating his arch-enemy, while Sylphie celebrated her master's triumph enthusiastically. Additionally, Kaito leveled up and gained the provisional title of Goblin Exterminator, granted to those who had defeated a creature of that race and overcome the fear of dying against it, ensuring a 10% bonus to stats when facing that monster again. Since this victory was by luck, the effect is only provisional and weaker than the original. Kaito didn't know whether to be happy or feel humiliated by the system's accusation, but he didn't want to dwell on sadness at this moment, because intentionally family or not, he killed a goblin, and no one could take that from him. Next, he advanced through the second floor with Sylphie's help and defeated other goblins, further boosting the inexperienced adventurer's confidence. While walking, Kaito discovered that the Valkyrie's only desire was to serve her master, as if something was programmed into her mind to make his servant more than just that. He promised to explore the dungeon and help her learn about the world around her. Continuing their journey together, the duo continued their goblin hunt, and Kaito fed the girl with the essences dropped by the monsters. After leaving the dungeon, Kaito was praised by the employee for bringing 4 goblin cores to the sales table on his first day. The next day, he stayed in bed late without lifting a finger, and his mother warned him he would waste the entire Sunday at this rate. Kaito explained that every muscle in his body ached, and he couldn't get up, so the woman asked him to take it easier on the job. The day after, he went to school beside Katsuragi, feeling like he had cement in his underwear. The girl immediately realized he had been to the dungeon again, but as he denied it, she asked why he had such muscle pain. He then said he had joined a gym to bulk up and ended up overdoing it. Katsuragi analyzed his impaired shape and commented that he wouldn't look good too muscular. Anyway, this was enough to change the subject, and Kaito felt relieved. At school, some girls were talking about the Dan brothers making a new movie set to release next year titled Summer Story of the Seven in the Dungeon. Simultaneously, Kaito told his friends he had crushed the goblins on the second floor, and the guys didn't expect that from him. Kaito felt offended, but at least gained confidence, which was enough for now. Now he dreams of reaching the deeper floors of the dungeon, so his friends warned him not to rush. Keeping up the pace, the adventurer returned to the cave again and explored an untouched corner of the second floor. As on the previous day, the cycle repeated, and they defeated the goblins that appeared, leaving Takeo exhausted for the next day. As time passed, he gradually improved his equipment, such as buying a tungsten bar to make his hunting more effective. When he arrived at school, the kid was a total deadweight, which increasingly bothered Katsuragi. Nonetheless, he didn't give up on his goal and kept returning to the dungeon daily. After much effort, he finally reached level 10, and amid Sylphie's enthusiastic applause, he was awarded the Divine Blessing, a title given to those loved by deities and similar beings. The bonus from the statistics increases as the user levels up, and the rate of this increase will depend on the love of that deity. In light of this, Kaito Takagi realizes he has gained an overpowered ability and celebrates his rise to prominence like never before. With this, he bows to Sylphie, the only deity he knows, and says that all this is thanks to her. Holding the young Valkyrie's hand, he hopes to rely on her even more from now on, and this is exactly the girl's wish, to be there for whatever her master needs. The way Kaito expressed himself enchanted the girl, who becomes even happier to discover some deeper feelings from that young man, so she states it is wonderful to have him as her master. Next, they encounter a glowing skeleton on their path, so Kaito questions if this glow is the effect of the divine blessing, or if the enemy is a rare monster. To defeat it, the two repeat a strategy that had been working well. The Valkyrie summons the Maiden's Wall, a magical shield that keeps the enemy at a distance, then Kaito delivers the final blow. However, this time the tungsten bar can't handle the skeleton's hardness and causes no damage, so the boy asks the Valkyrie to use her divine lightning, annihilating the creature instantly. When the essence drops, Kaito is frustrated to discover that it has nothing special, even though the skeleton was rare, except for being a red stone, a color he didn't have before in this type of item. Behind him, Sylphie already wants to devour the stone, and upon receiving her meal, she jumps for joy, eating the best thing she has ever tasted. Later, upon leaving the dungeon, the staff member tells him that the red essence is worth 2 million yen, making the poor boy die of regret. At night, all he can think about is the 2 million that went up in smoke, or rather into Sylphie's stomach. As a consolation, he convinces himself that the Valkyrie deserved a tastier meal after all she had done for him. Speaking of which, he wonders whether he should descend to the third floor, as the second is already becoming easy, but hesitates as this floor has group monsters. The next day, already inside the cave, he tells Sylphie that he wants to fight alone, so the girl thinks she did something wrong and despairs, but he explains that he wants to go to the third floor and will end up becoming too dependent on the Valkyrie if he goes with her, and he doesn't want that. Speaking of which, he says he sees Sylphie not as a servant, but as a little sister he can always count on. To strengthen this relationship even more, he starts calling her Shile, a nickname she loves more than anything, enchanted by having a master who cares so much for her. In the midst of this, a goblin appears in front of the two, so Kaito asks to handle the enemy alone. On leaving the dungeon, the staff member asks the adventurer not to overdo it, so he replies that the only dose he wants at the moment is a healing potion because he was massacred. At home, reading a magazine with the Dan brothers on the cover, Kaito laments having spent the money he managed to accumulate so far to buy a single healing potion that even at a low level is absurdly expensive. To make matters worse, he needed better equipment to descend to the 3rd floor and still gather magic cores for Shile to eat. So he returns to his old days and sprays insecticide on every slime that crossed his path. Updating his friends on the latest events, they think the boy is regressing after having gone so far, but he assures them that slime hunting is just a temporary measure to save money. Hearing the word slime, Katsuragi questions what the boy has been up to, so he pretends he was actually talking about Eslane, his 4th cousin. Like it or not, the lie works and Katsuragi leaves without further ado. The next day, the gelatinous monster slaughter gains another chapter, yielding so many crystals that Kaito was already accumulating them in a pouch. With the sale of this amount, he is sure he will be able to buy equipment, and some cores will still be left for Shile's nourishment. That said, the Valkyrie senses a strange presence near them, so they investigate until they discover it was a silver slime lurking in the dungeon. Without wasting time, Kaito attacks the creature with his insecticide, but as it escaped, Shile finishes the job with her lightning. Upon picking up the dropped item, Kaito was all smiles because in his hand was a new servant card, this time a Viscount level demon named Lucilia. Behind the boy, Shile can't hide a pang of jealousy. Anyway, Kaito was worried about summoning a demon and causing some problem for himself, like being cursed or possessed. However, looking at Shile, he thinks about the dream. It must be to summon a deity and a demon at the same time. With this in mind, he chooses to go this route and conjures the card's power, generating a great fire tornado that dissipates and reveals the demonic figure of Lucilia. The demon, who was in a non-physical state, passes through Kaito, who welcomes his newest servant with open arms. Within a few seconds, the summoned one appears in her younger form. To clear any doubts, Kaito asks the girl's name, and she confirms she is Lucilia, a demon of Viscount level. The young man expected something different when he saw the card's image, so he kneels and questions where his horned muse went. With no patience for his outburst, Lucilia comments that his master doesn't seem very trustworthy or intelligent. Shile asks the little demon not to speak that way about the master, explaining that demons act impulsively, not out of malice. Taking advantage of the moment, the demon looks the Valkyrie up and down, and Sylphie happily says that she too serves Kaito. Since the boy is the master, Lucilia stretches out her hand and asks for food, but he complains that the freeloader hasn't done anything yet. To solve this problem, Shile notices a slime nearby and steps up to show her worth. With the flames of destruction, she annihilates the poor slime, turning it to ashes. Kaito understands why she has 130 battle points. After the victory, Lucilia earns her deserved reward and extends her hand, asking for more food. Kaito checks her status and requests that she use the corrosive breath next time, then she receives another magic core. That said, she uses the ability on a dungeon goblin, leaving Kaito and Shile in shock at the horror of the scene. After eating the goblin core, Lucilia finds it tastier and assumes that the cores of stronger monsters are more delicious, so she rushes to descend to the next floor. Kaito explains that on this floor monsters appear in groups, so they would need to acquire new weapons first, but the demon doesn't want to hear any excuses. Shile intervenes, saying that the master does this for their benefit, so Lucilia gives up, insisting seeing it won't lead anywhere. But since that's the case, Kaito promises that tomorrow they will challenge the 3rd floor together. The next day, the group descends and the boy shows off an expensive crossbow he bought, but Lucilia warns that just because it's expensive doesn't mean it's good. Either way, only time will tell who's right, and soon after they encounter 2 hellhounds. Kaito tries to take down the first, but misses the shot. The hounds chase the humans, so Shile protects the master with her magic shield. Then Kaito asks Lucilia to attack, and with the flames of destruction, she takes down the hounds in the blink of an eye and devours her reward. Having defeated both enemies, she demands both cores, but Kaito says there won't be any left for Shile. Either way, they continue their path, gathering more cores. Lucilia warns that if he's lying, she'll throw him into the inferno. After that moment, the team continues until they encounter 2 wild boars. Confident, the demoness casts her usual spell, but this time one of the enemies emerges unscathed from the flames. Kaito steps in and hits the boar in the eye, enraging it even more as it charges towards the group. Fear causes the boy to fall, but in a panic he fires again and hits the boar in the forehead, ending it. While Shiel praised the master's performance, Luceria mocked the fact that he had fallen. In the midst of this, the young man notices he has leveled up to 11 and celebrates, but the demon is only interested in more cores to fill her stomach. After this expedition, Kaito laments that he didn't earn much money because Luceria always wanted more food. Next to him, a group of young girls celebrates their successful descent to the 6th floor, making the boy think he might be able to do the same and seek more valuable rewards. One day later, lost in these thoughts, Kaito's attention is called by his friends. They think Kaito is considering which school to invest in after graduation, as this is the main concern of any serious student, until Katsuragi joins the conversation thinking this is the topic. To avoid embarrassment, Kaito pretends he was thinking about that exact subject, but gets flustered when the girl asks which school he chose. He throws the question back at her, and she says she would like to go to the Aoka Institute. He takes the opportunity to pretend he wants to go there too, cheering up his friend as they've always been together since kindergarten. At that moment, a friend calls Haruka to help organize some papers, so the girl leaves. Back on the 3rd floor of the dungeon, Luceria continued to decimate the opponents in front of her, always eager to devour each core that dropped from her victories. With divine lightning, Shiel didn't lag behind in terms of strength, and the demon's corrosive breath remained useful in battle despite not being visually pleasant for others. Anyway, the master kept feeding his pupils with Luceria, always asking for more. On one of these occasions, Shiel looks strangely at Kaito, who notices but says nothing. As her colleague got more and more food, the Valkyrie maintained that look, so the boy decides to ask what's going on. She pretends nothing is wrong, but reflecting on it in the bath, the boy realizes it was as if she were avoiding him. On TV, the Dan siblings girl did not accept how a newcomer treated her brother, so she decided to settle the differences in a duel. Kaito begins to imagine what it would be like if his two pupils decided to do the same, and thinking about it causes the young man to despair, having no idea what he would do if the situation reached that extreme. The next day, the poor guy has huge dark circles under his eyes, and Katsuragi already imagines what happened when they meet on their way to school, so she offers to help. Kaito lies, saying that Shinji and Hayato have befriended completely different girls, and the quieter girl doesn't seem to like the bolder one, so he wonders how to make everyone get along. Katsuragi advises him to ask the person directly instead of making assumptions, and Kaito relates this advice to the Shiel situation. So when he returns to the dungeon, he summons only Shiel to talk to her. Getting straight to the point, he asks if the Valkyrie likes Luceria, and she replies that she found her colleague a bit intimidating at first, but she said she didn't mean any harm. Therefore, Shiel considers Luceria a kind girl and adores her. So the master asks if there's any other problem, because he cares a lot about the Valkyrie and doesn't want her to be unhappy by his side. With that, Shiel spills the beans and says that the master is nice to Luceria all the time and wishes he would be that way with her too. She argues that the demon gets way more cores than she does. Before Luceria arrived, the Valkyrie felt much closer to the master. In other words, she wants Kaito to talk to her more. Realizing this, the boy understands that even these mythical creatures can feel jealous. Anyway, he promises to give the same number of magic cores to both of them and to talk more with Sylphie. Putting his promise into action, after their first victory of the day, both girls get the same portion, and Kaito praises the Valkyrie's participation. The demon isn't happy about this, as the master has never praised her for anything, so he does the same for the other girl to balance things out again. Next, after defeating another wild boar, Shiel levels up, which increases her stats and grants her 2 more spells. Kaito praises the girl, and this time even Luceria concedes and gives her some credit. To show off her increased strength, Shiel uses divine lightning on 3 hellhounds at once, defeating them all. As for Maiden's Wall, its duration was increased. Luceria offers to finish off the boar, but Kaito himself decides to practice his aim. When it comes to the reward, Kaito gives the 2 cores to Shiel, leaving Luceria outraged because she didn't help in the battle only because the master didn't let her. On top of that, Shiel admits that she's not satisfied with just 2 and asks for 1 more. Leaving the dungeon, Kaito laments the fact that the Valkyrie's appetite has grown along with her level. The woman who handles the exchanges notices that the boy has been bringing in fewer cores, which makes him even more irate. In these moments of difficulty, it's time to return to basics. With that in mind, Kaito goes after the slimes. After defeating the 25th one, Luceria asks to help out, but he replies that he won't be able to accumulate anything if the demon gets involved. Since that's the case, she says she shouldn't even be summoned, to which Shyle eagerly comments that would be great because she could cheer for her master without being interrupted. Kaito uses this to teach Luceria that he's only able to do all this because he has the support of both of them, and this phrase touches her in some way, even though she doesn't like to admit it. Later, the nosy woman comments that the adventurer has only been bringing slime cores, and he responds that he decided to reminisce about the old days. She mentions that Kaito must be ready to descend to the 4th floor. When he gets home, he researches stronger equipment on the internet to reach this more challenging floor and finds a full carbon nanotube suit, but it costs 5,000 yen. As he needs a lot of money, Kaito returns to the dungeon and finds a metallic blue slime, a special monster also related to the divine blessing ability. Wasting no time, he summons the girls to deal with the creature, and the two seem to be getting along better after what the master said about needing both of their support. Working as a team, they defeat the slime. Kaito is eager to grab his dropped servant card and rushes to the slime's loot. However, when he gets there, there's a magic orb which can turn him into a mage. There's no way he intends to sell the orb, so he throws it on the ground and activates its components, generating a mana layer that envelops the user and triggers a reaction in his body. Checking his menu, Kaito Takagi notes that he gained the water ball ability and gets excited about his new talent. To test the spell, Kaito approaches a hellhound and asks Shyle to open her magic shield. If he can't defeat the enemy, he asks Luceria to intervene with the flames of destruction. With the strategy set, the Valkyrie activates the Maiden's Wall, giving the master comfort to experiment with the water ball on the dog, but the attack simply doesn't cause any damage. Thus, Luceria solves the problem once and for all, while Kaito wonders if that was really magic. To console the master, Shyle says the magic will improve over time, while Luceria comments that the guy will never have to get out of bed to drink water again. Hearing this, he lowers his head and realizes it would have been better to sell the orb. At night, he goes alone to the park near the school to lament, and coincidentally Katsuragi was nearby. She asks what's wrong with him, and distracted, the boy replies that it's the magic. Realizing the mistake, he tries to correct it by saying he was talking about the movie The Magic Girl because he saw it and it wasn't what he expected. The girl argues that this movie got great reviews, so Kaito changes the subject and asks to walk her home. On the way, he thanks her for the advice about asking the person directly instead of assuming, because thanks to that he solved his problem. With that, Katsuragi replies that the problem was with him after all. The boy insists it was an issue with Shinji and Hayato, but the girl says goodbye and goes inside. Inside, she shows her frustration with the conversation, while Kaito begins to suspect that even she is jealous.